Hello and welcome back to Ray's Coffee and Cards. I was not able to get a video done last week. I am so sorry for that. But hopefully I will be able to maybe make up for that today. The card class that we had recently seemed to go really well. Everyone seemed to really enjoy it. We actually did calendar cards. And this was the only sample I had left out of the different designs that we had available. And this one was actually made as a male version. Didn't have flowers or birds or anything that a guy would call foo-foo. And so this was the only one we had left. And of course, in the way it was designed, to sit up on the desk and not take up a very large footprint. And they are mini tear-off calendars that I ordered from Tailored Expressions. I believe there's one other company out there that also sells them, but I really appreciate that company, and made sure that everyone went home with a couple of extra calendars and a project sheet so that they could recreate a couple of more to give away. One of the things that I took, my husband had recently made me a pressure tool. These are becoming really popular. There's all kinds of them out there. Some of them are really fancy with ornate doorknobs and different ways of putting them together. But my husband is also a wood crafter, and so he handmade this. And I think this one here is like a 2.5-inch ball. And it's kind of big for my hands. My hands are kind of small, and I don't really need one this big. I'm very blessed. I do not have arthritis in my hands. So I don't really need one this big. However, there were a couple of people there that did order a couple of these, and so he is in the process of working on them. They will have felt on the bottom. These are made for the Stamparatus or the Misty or whatever stamp positioning tool you may have. And a lot of times our stamps that we're using can be fairly large, and so when you go to apply the ink, you find that you're having to press. And for some people, that may be really hard on their fingers and things. And so these pressure tools are amazing. You don't have to have really any muscle to just kind of glide that over to give even pressure and coverage on your inked image. So he is working on that, ladies, for those of you who ordered those. In the meantime, I had him make me a smaller one. This is about 1.5 inches here, I think. One of the things I really love is all the characteristics of each piece of wood, because each one is different. And the way the stain applies to all the characteristics, and no two are the same. And so this one fits my hand much better than the big one, but you know, to each his own. But yes, he's working on doing both sizes, so no matter which size you want, there will be one to your liking. Okay. I was playing with the Flowers of Friendship, which is in the annual catalog this weekend. And the reason I was playing with it, I've got an order on the way from the January to June 2022 mini catalog. And one of the sets that I have coming, let me get the catalog here and I'll show you. It is on page 56. And this just really, I thought this was beautiful. And you don't always get those sets that have those really pretty decorative swirls. My mind got busy with all kinds of ideas. And of course, they did have some card samples here that their artists had put together for even more ideas. It's just a stamp set. There are no dies that will go with this. And they are photopolymer. And if you'll read the fine print, it says that it coordinates with the Strawberry Builder Punch, which is in the annual catalog, and the Flowers and Leaves Punch that is in the annual catalog. And I thought, wait a minute, I've got that punch. I've got that Flowers and Leaves Punch. Yes, I did. So I went to my punches and I found it. Now, I have a habit, I label mine when I get them. And there's the name of the punch, Flowers and Leaves. And it coordinates with the Flowers of Friendship stamp set. And I thought, oh, that is awesome. I'm going to have 2 stamp sets that both coordinate with this punch. I don't know how many of you out there may have already bought that punch, may have it, may have been considering it. But we are now going to not only have the Flowers of Friendship from the annual catalog, you will now have the Sentimental Swirls. Sorry, my bad. Yes, I also ordered the Flowing Flowers. Again, it's just a stamp set, but I thought it was so pretty. But if you've been looking at Flowers of Friendship, or if you've been looking at the Flower and Leaves Punch, now you have even more reason to go ahead and not delay and get that. So this punch cuts out a large flower, small flower, large leaf, and a small leaf. Now, when you're getting ready to punch, one of the ideas I have seen from several demonstrators out there was a way to line up your stamps on your block so that you can stamp this image and punch this image very easily. And I did originally have mine completely set up. You're going to take just a scrap piece of cardstock and you're going to insert it and punch out your image, okay? Well, can I get that all the way in there now that I'm on video? Maybe, maybe not. Anyway, you're going to punch that out and you're going to flip it over, okay? That's going to be real important that you flip that over. And I'm trying to, I've already used mine a little bit. So yes, this would be the right way up. After you punched it out, you would flip it over. And I found that the D block held all 4 stamps perfectly. So what I did is I took that cutout and I laid it on my block and I started sliding my stamps under it. And I did have the little flower and I did have the big flower put under there. But then in playing with the set and creating cards, and we're going to do a couple of cards with that set today, I ended up having to take them off the block. But that is an idea if you want to use that. Personally, I tend to use card scrap anyway, a cardstock scrap, when I'm getting ready to do any kind of punching or anything. And so it's not like I'm going to stick a brand new 8.5 by 11 sheet of cardstock in there and just start. So for me, usually I want my flowers punched out of one color and my leaves out of another color, unless I'm going to do it on white cardstock and then hand color with their Stampin' Blends or pencils or ink daubers, or, you know, there's a variety of ways you could color that on white cardstock. So I don't tend to use all that, but still, it's an idea I thought I would pass on just in case that was something you were interested in. So in playing around this weekend, this was the first card that I had come up with. And I liked it, and yet I didn't like it. I kind of feel like I should have resized my little panel over here. And if you can tell, I stamped this in soft suede, and I punched and stamped the leaves in Old Olive, and I used our in color Fresh Freesia. I stamped it in Fresh Freesia. I could have stamped it in black, but I did the Fresh Freesia. Kind of like that look. It's a little softer than using black or soft suede for the outline. And the paper in the celebration from January through February of this year. It is one of the freebies that you can earn, and it's called Simply Marvelous, and you can tell I've already been cutting into it, and here's one of my strips. There are several colors in here, including some of the new in colors, and so this one here is not Fresh Freesia. If I said Fresh Freesia, I apologize. This one here is actually Bumblebee, but the Fresh Freesia goes so well with it. And I also thought the soft suede was a better choice for this than maybe the Memento Black. So, I mean, it's okay. I just kind of wish I had redesigned and resized a little bit. A lot of times when I'm in my card room, I just kind of come in here. I have a set that I want to work with, but I don't have anything specifically in mind. And I figured out real quick, when I stamped this image, and it's, of course, it stamped the flowers, I was not able to take just a punched out flower and cover that. Can you tell? Like if that's the size it actually stamps. And so it wasn't going to cover totally that image unless I layered them. And it looks okay. You can certainly do that. Not a thing wrong with it. It actually gives it a little bit more dimension. But I thought, a lot of times we are looking for simpler ways to generate cards, and especially if we want to mass produce them. So then I started playing again, and this time I played with the Fresh Freesia, and this DSP came from the 2021 to 2023 in color designer series paper, and so it's got your Fresh Freesia, your Pale Papaya, all of that in there. And I was a little happier with that. I kind of had a little bit of an oops when I stamped that, which whoever gets this card may or may not realize that was even an oops, because the kind of globby ink was on the word big. Okay, almost like it's emphasizing little card, big thanks. And they would never know the difference. But what I did in order to be able to do single flowers is I took and I masked off the stamp. That way there I could ink this up, remove the tape, stamp the image down without the flower heads also being stamped. So, and that's part of the technique that we are going to do today. It's a way to alter your stamps without physically changing them by cutting into them or anything else. So, I thought I would go back to the Fresh Freesia color, and it's pretty much kind of laid out the same as the, did I just say Fresh Freesia again? Oh my heavens, Pale Papaya. I don't know, purple is one of my favorite colors, and I kind of get a mental block when it comes to color names because I'm focused on purple. I've also been working with Highland Heather this weekend. I've been working with, and I'm missing one of my little flowers. Oh, there it is. Oh, oops. Let's straighten that out. So very quickly, let me show you how easy it is to put this together. So this strip of DSP is only 1 inch wide, okay? You have a normal card base that is 4 by 5 1/4, and it's scored at 4 1/4. And we have got our layering piece of Pale Papaya. And I cut this at 4 1/8 by 5 3/8. So let's just go ahead and put that on there. Let's go ahead and start building our card. Now, there is an easier way to do these cards, especially if you want to mass produce. And you could forego the punch altogether and just simply stamp your image and your sentiment. Which, by the way I'm going to cover that up is I'm going to restamp that on another piece of cardstock and cut that out and just glue that over the top. They'll never know. And if I use dimensionals, it'll actually look as though it was part of the design. All right, so we have our inside piece. I've already prepped some of this, guys, because I know a lot of you don't have time to watch really long videos, and I don't mean to keep you here very long. We're all busy and we just have so much to do. All right, so this was the piece I prepped, and I was able to, well, a lot of times on the inside I will cut my piece just a little bit smaller. And sometimes, you know, if I'm really going the distance, if it's extra special, I would have cut a layer of pale papaya to put under there. But this is good enough for a basic card. And again, if you're trying to mass produce, you don't want to get into having to do a lot of layers, okay? All right, so here is our front panel. And if it helps you when you get ready to do your stamping, if you follow this particular design, by all means, go ahead and attach this piece, and it may help your eye kind of see where to stamp. So, I really like the soft suede with the pale papaya. It's vibrant enough, it's gonna stand out, but it's not like as vivid as maybe black would be. And I'm looking to see, yep, I think I have that inked up pretty well. Oh, it has been amazingly busy and chaotic here. And isn't it funny how life can be? So I'm basically just coming in a little bit from that left edge. I'm not worried about centering it exactly from top to bottom, but I do want it to kind of fill in a lot of that vertical field here on the front of the card. All right, so there we have that. Let me close up my ink pad. I have got ink under my fingernails, under my nail polish. I've really been playing hard and heavy, and not a whole lot to show for it. Give me just a second here. So, I punched out 2 of the small flowers and 1 of the large ones, but before we go any further, first of all, I want to cap off my glue here, make sure it doesn't start drying up. That's got such a fine point on it. Let's cap that up for the moment. I did the other one in Old Olive. This one has the Old Olive leaves. This one has the Granny Apple Green. I forgot to tell you that a minute ago. But with the pale papaya, I really think I want to color those leaves with the Old Olive. Now, everybody has their own way of doing these. Some people like to do the dark first and then go back with the light. I prefer to color the light and color that in. But I like to fill in with the light, go in with the dark, and then go back with the light to kind of help blend it out. And initially, I'm not concerned if there are some little white areas left, because I know I'm going to be coming back and filling that in. Unless you're doing like an outright watercolor technique, white spots after I've colored absolutely drive me crazy. I don't like it. Okay, now I tend to follow the suggestions that the artist has drawn in, but I'm not afraid to ad lib either. So a lot of times the base of your leaves is even darker. And depending on the leaf shape, you could also do some shading even at the very top and kind of work to where you've got your light area kind of in the middle. Then when I go back with the light, I like to go back over where it was dark and bring some of that out. And then once it's all fully dry, you actually have more tones in your Stampin' Blends image. So just kind of bring that up and out. You have to be careful. I am using regular basic white for this layer. The card base is actually cut from thick basic white, just to give more stability to the card overall. Give a little extra weight and heft. All right, good enough. These are alcohol inks. For those of you who may not have these or understand what they are, they blend beautifully. They dry quickly. They are wonderful. They are truly wonderful. Okay, so at this point, we can attach the leaves, flowers. We can attach the flowers. I tend to try to make sure that the stem is like going up in between petals. I don't know that every variety of real flower grows that way, but some do. Some are very much like that. It doesn't bother me. That is partially obscuring a leaf because nature mimics. You have flowers and leaves all together. And then here's the big one. I chose to put it on top. However, on this card, I chose to have it behind the two small ones. I also chose to pop it up with dimensionals. However, the person that is going to get this card, I'm going to deliver it in person, so I didn't mind popping it up. I'm not going to be mailing that with extra postage. But let's assume, again, we're mass producing. We want to get by with as little postage as possible and really speed this up. And you could forego using the punch and by all means, just stamp that whole image and it would be so pretty. You could color it in really quick. You could leave it plain. One of the techniques that I like to do, and we might be doing that on the next card. I don't fully have it totally planned out yet, but a lot of this DSP, absolutely you can stamp on it and it show up, and your DSP can be your background and you don't have to color anything in. Case in point, so one of our wonderful stampers in the card ministry blessed me with this thank you card last week. And she had taken some of this pretty DSP. Oh, my mind just went blank on it and I don't have it right here next to me. And she stamped on the background. See how well that's showing up even on there? And then she took and heat embossed the word thanks and die cut it out of a piece of vellum. I just thought that was such an elegant, elegant card. I was grateful to get the thank you card, but I was also very impressed. She did an excellent job on that card. All right, so we're going to stick that down. We're going to get our piece of... Now, the DSP is two-sided. You can use either side you want to. For some reason, I decided to go with, and I don't know what you would call that. You know what it reminds me of? Some of you are old enough to remember these. So you used to be able to buy these oil lamps that you would hang. They all hung up. And they were battery or they were electric, and they literally had oil in them. And this oil would run down all these little strings, these cords and things that were in in these lamps. It was really pretty the way they were put together. I haven't seen one of those in a long time, but they were big in the 60s, 70s, something like that. But the oil would kind of like be in these little chunks, blobs, whatever you want to call it, as they would be running down the string. And so I don't know, I really like that pattern. All right, we are almost done with the first card. Now let's get ready to stamp our sentiment. I'm going back to the soft suede, kind of keep that uniform. Let me close up my glue really quick. And I'm going to stamp it with little card, big thanks. Yes, my blocks are dirty. About every 2 weeks, I round them all up for their bath in the kitchen sink. But I hadn't been able to do that yet. So, cross your fingers, say a prayer that I stamp that somewhat straight. Give that just a second to absorb. Not bad, not bad. That came out pretty good. Now, there's a variety of ways you could step these up and really make them fancy if you really want to go to a lot of trouble and fuss with it a little bit. But, you know, on a daily basis, I think most of us prefer sweet and simple. And this is very sweet, very simple. Doesn't take long at all to put this together. So we are now ready to put this on the front. One of the tips I meant to tell you, and I forgot to, you know, anytime you are cutting your little strips, and like I may have just a tiniest bit of white showing, normally what I will do when I am cutting these is I will cut them maybe a 1/16 of an inch longer than I mean to. Then that way there, if there's just a little bit hanging over the edge, you can always trim that off before you apply it down to your card base. But there's been times I've cut this and I was off just a teeny bit, and that white was really showing. And so then I had no choice but to go and cut another strip. So I have learned, just go ahead, cut it just a tad bit, just a hair more, because it's better to trim than not have enough. Okay, on the inside of this one, I have not yet decided what sentiment I want to stamp, if any. But there is our simple Flowers of Friendship card. And that's really cute. Anyone would be proud to receive that card, and it didn't take a long time. The only other thing that I am going to do, and no, you do not always have to add embellishments, but you know, us girls like our bling. And these are the Era Popular 2021 to 2023 in color jewels. So we have the Pale Papaya, the Polished Pink, the Fresh Freesia, the Evening Evergreen, and the Soft Succulent, which I've just about almost used all of those. But even though this doesn't exactly match, I think it's close enough. I think that's really, really pretty. Now, on that very first card I made, I don't know if you noticed, I didn't put the embellishments in the middle of the flower. I chose to put them, scatter them over on the side where I had my sentiment. And these aren't the in-color jewels. Those were the polished dots. And I'm not real sure. I'm thinking that is supposed to be Blushing Bride. But doesn't that look good on there? And it totally picked up the tones of the Bumblebee and Papaya color. I thought it looked really good. Sometimes their substitutions work out better than we think they're going to. All right, so there is that card. We're going to put that one to the side. A couple of my favorite colors is Bermuda Bay and Coastal Cabana. So let me get my pieces out here. Again, I just have the traditional white card base out of the thick basic white. I have my 4 1/8 by 5 3/8 piece to go on the front. And if I didn't tell you, that was the same dimensions as the pale papaya layer on this card. Okay, so I have that. I have my top piece for stamping. I have my flowers already cut out. I have my inside layer because I thought I would go ahead and go the extra distance on this particular card. And I have my 1-inch strip of that Marvelous, Mini Marvelous, Simply Marvelous. Oh my heavens, I usually do better at that at memorizing. I don't know about you guys. You know, the holidays are now behind us, and I would have thought everything would have been back up to speed by now. Not so much. It's been one of those months where it seems like the best laid plans. You know how that goes. And something is constantly interrupting and intervening and making you put things that you would normally be doing on hold. And I get really distracted when things come up unexpectedly. And so then it's like my brain just kind of like goes, it doesn't know how to handle it. Okay, before we do that, let's go ahead and glue our inside layers together. Because I can always go in and stamp an inside sentiment later. For right now, we're just going to prep that. And I don't know why I have a frog in my throat. I didn't have a frog in my throat. Now I have a frog in my throat. I think part of the issue is the room that I have for my craft room, small as it is, and I'm blessed to have it, so I'm not complaining, but something about the way the heat ducts and everything are designed, it can get like super warm in here. Like I'm telling you, there's been many a time I've gone running out of here thinking, man, I've got to cool off. But it is not a good thing to close the heat vents. Now, I'm not sure if that was an artifact that was already there and I didn't notice it, or if I got something on there. Oh well, no big deal. We'll camouflage it one way or another. We all know those tricks, don't we, ladies? Okay, so this is going to be the piece that goes on. And again, you know, if you want to apply this piece first, you certainly can. There's no shame in that. And it's two-sided. There's no reason why you couldn't turn it over and use that side if you like that pattern better. For this particular card, I really appreciate the other side for these card designs. So I'm going to line that up to the edge. Make sure I'm covered at top and bottom. And I think I did have all cylinders firing when I cut the length of this. And so, yes, I have just a tiny bit hanging over. So let's just trim that off real quick before we go any further. I would rather have to cut off a little extra than to have to go cut another strip, because none of us like to waste our cardstock, do we? All right. Now, let's stamp. And I don't know that I particularly want to use thank you again, because the person that I have in mind for this card just possibly needs a pickup. So I think, and I'm thinking this is retired, it's called Happy Thoughts, and I'm thinking that this was in a celebration or a mini catalog from last year. I should have done my homework and I didn't, but I want to put thinking of you on the outside. So let me grab a block. We're gonna mount that. Now, normally what I do is I just plop it down and then I pick it up and I look at it to see if I think it is straight. Honestly, I'm usually pretty good at eyeballing it to see if it's straight. And then of course, let me get my black ink. I'm not going to use that soft suede. I always do a practice stamp just to see if my eyes are correct. Inked up the wrong one. My heavens. All right. I promise y'all I'm not going to see now, at least not yet. All right. Let me see. That looks kind of straight. Tell you what, they make us grid paper for a reason, don't they? I've got a piece of grid paper in my Stamparatus. I'm just going to ink this up again and see if I really do have it straight. It is straight. It is. All right, awesome. Let's re-ink. Kind of make sure that's somewhat straight. You know, after you've been doing this for a while, you'll get to where you'll be a lot more comfortable and you won't have to take quite as long making sure that everything is inked up correctly. But I do want to go ahead and put my sentiment in there. I'll hold that for just a moment. Okay. I don't know how many of you have this habit. It's always a good idea, rather than go directly to your chamois or your Stampin' Scrub to clean, go ahead and get that excess ink off. It will greatly slow down your stuff from having to be cleaned as often. Yeah, it's still wet. Yeah, I've been using this all weekend, and so I didn't even have to put any more Stampin' Mist in there for cleaning. Still had plenty. All right, I am going to close up my glue for the moment. I'm always paranoid it's going to close up on me. It hasn't yet. Oops. The one I accidentally inked up. And of course, wouldn't you know it, the big didn't glob up in the ink like it did on the other card. But again, we're going to fix that. That's not a problem. Okay. Now, let me get this one re-prepped because we don't want to stamp those flowers. Although we could stamp the flowers. I could show you an alternative method. Absolutely. Let me get, let's just go ahead and stamp the whole thing. I hadn't planned on it because I had my flowers pre-done. Basically what I did on this card is I mixed Bermuda Bay and Coastal Cabana because they are basically the same color. It's just one is darker than the other. But let's go ahead and let's say we're wanting to mass produce cards, and so we want to eliminate as many steps as we can. We can just absolutely go in there and stamp that. You hold that. There we go. Oops, sorry, I hit the camera. Oh, I'm so sorry. All right, so you are good to leave it just like this, or you can take your stamping blends and color it in. For the sake of this video, we're just going to leave it like that. It's got a clean, simple look. We'll go ahead and put this on. Doesn't take a whole lot of glue. Just like it doesn't take a whole lot of the Tombow. Some of you may be wondering why. Now, I still love my Tombow. And I have used Tombow for a very, very long time. And I am now going to give up on my Tombow glue. However, me and Stampin' Up's fine line glue bottle did not get along. Like, it, despite my best efforts, it kept clogging up on me. And it is so extremely tiny and hard to get unclogged. And after it did that the third time, I threw it in the trash. So I went looking for another alternative for those times that you just need. I'm getting all those glue boogers built out. Let me get those off. For a time that you just need a real fine point. And this is really good glue. It's not sticky, for one thing. It holds just as well as Tombow does. And when you order it, it comes with all these different tips that you can elect to use. And so here is another, and that would be like a regular tip, like most of your glue bottles have. And it also came with a it came with a pen. And normally I use this pen and it has saved me many a time. You can tell it's all bent. Well, a lot of customers were crying out wanting those replacement pens that you could also use in the top of the bottle. And it's so much easier for me to get that in there. That they came out, you know, you can order extra pens if they get bent up. Mine's a little bent up, but it's doable. The very first one that came with the bottle, I don't know what I did one day, but I bent it beyond repair. I had to throw it away. All right. But yes, it's nice to have other glues too, along with the wonderful ones that we already get from Stampin' Up. So that's the reason for that. Okay, guys, this card is done. This card is done. You can step it down. You can step it up. You can step it up more with dimensionals. You can step it up even more by doubling up your blooms. And on this one, I actually did punch out the leaves and put that on there. So you can get as fancy or as simple as you want with this. All right, guys. The only other thing I wanted to kind of share real quick before I say goodbye, I did not show the card I made for my husband for Christmas. And so I wanted to show that one really quick. His was the only one I put this much time and attention into. Yes, it was with a retired set. It was in the catalog before this one called Arrange a Wreath. And then in the last mini catalog, the holiday, what we call the holiday catalog, was the Peaceful Cabin and the DSP that coordinated. And so this was the card I made him for his birthday, which was 2 days after Christmas. And then on the back of it, I have my sentiment back there because there wasn't really room to write on this the way it was designed. Anyway, guys, I hope y'all are having a great time of it. Be blessed, and I will see you next week. Bye.